All right. Strong snus and nicotine pouches, huh?
Sounds like someone's ready to bring the heat.
That's right.
Ugh.
We're diving deep into your 2024 article.
Oh, the one about the strongest stuff out there.
Yeah, the strongest snus and nicotine pouches. And it seems like you're really ready to explore some intense experiences, huh?
Well, yeah.
So I'm guessing you probably think it's all about, like, how much nicotine is in there, right?
Yeah, a lot of people think that. I mean, it's definitely a big part of it,
Right.
but it's not the whole picture, you know?
Ah, okay. So it's kind of like if you have a good cup of coffee,
Yeah,
it's not just about the caffeine, is it?
exactly. And the whole experience.
Yeah, yeah.
That's like a recipe, right? You got to have all the right ingredients in the right balance.
I like that. It's like a balanced equation. So we've got our nicotine,
Right.
but then what else is going on in there?
Well, you got things like pH levels. That can make a
Oh.
huge difference.
Okay, pH levels. I know that has to do with like acidity and stuff. But how does that actually like change how the snus feels?
So basically, the higher the pH level,
Uh-huh.
the faster the nicotine gets absorbed into your system.
Oh, really?
It's like instead of taking the stairs, you're taking the express elevator straight to the top.
Oh, wow.
You're going to feel it much quicker and much more intensely.
So that's why you can have two different snus, and maybe they even have like the same amount of nicotine written on the can,
Exactly.
but one of them feels way stronger.
Exactly. And that's where those other factors come in.
Okay. Okay, so what about moisture?
Moisture is huge.
Yeah.
A wetter snus,
Yeah.
like loose snus or those original portions,
Yeah.
that nicotine's going to hit you much faster compared to something like a drier white portion,
Okay.
even if they technically have the same amount of nicotine in them.
So it's almost like the drier snus is kind of like a slow release kind of deal.
Exactly. It's a slower, more gradual nicotine experience.
Interesting.
And then we can't forget about flavor.
Oh, yeah.
Ever notice how a really strong menthol can almost trick your brain into thinking it's stronger,
Oh, yeah.
even if the nicotine level isn't that high?
Totally, totally. It's like it adds another layer of like intensity,
Exactly.
even if it's not really from the nicotine itself.
All about how our senses play together to create that overall experience.
Wow, this is like fascinating. I'm like unlocking, I don't know, the secret code of snus or something.
I like it.
But speaking of codes, what about those little symbols on the cans, like the rings?
Oh, yeah.
Do more rings automatically mean it's going to be stronger? Like, is that how it works?
Well, they're meant to be a guide, but it's not always that straightforward.
Okay.
Those symbols usually represent the perceived strength,
Okay.
which, like we've been saying, depends on all these other things we've talked about.
So it's not as easy as just like counting up the rings and knowing exactly what you're going to get?
It's not exact science. Everyone's different.
Right, right.
You've got your own tolerance level. Plus, how your body reacts to all those other elements, that plays a huge role too.
Wow, okay, so many factors. Now, I know your article mentioned Siberia Nagatati White Dry,
Ah, yes.
and that one's supposed to be like really strong. Have you heard of that one?
Oh, yeah. Siberia Nagadati, that's like legendary.
It's infamous.
Yeah.
43 milligrams of nicotine per gram.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
To put that in perspective, you'd have to chain smoke cigarettes to even get close to that level of nicotine.
43 milligrams.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so that's serious business. So what makes it so strong? Is it just like the nicotine itself, or is there more to it?
It's a perfect storm of factors.
Oh.
You got that super intense mint flavor, and then it's in those white portions, which are super dry. So that really concentrates the nicotine. And on top of that, they've adjusted the pH level to make sure your body absorbs it as efficiently as possible.
So they're not messing around.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's definitely not for beginners.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to try that one as my first NOS, that's for sure. Even for experienced users, you have to start slow with something that potent.
Right. It's like you don't just jump to the final level of a video game, right? You got to level up your tolerance first.
Exactly.
So we've talked about strong snus, but what about those supercharged nicotine pouches everyone's talking about?
Oh,
Are those like a whole different ballgame?
they're a different beast altogether.
Oh, okay.
Because while traditional Swedish snus is made with tobacco, right?
Yeah.
Nicotine pouches, they're completely tobacco-free. They use a chemically derived form of nicotine instead.
So same active ingredient, but from a different source.
Exactly.
Does that like change the experience at all?
Oh, it can, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Some people find that synthetic nicotine hits them faster and feels a little different than tobacco-derived nicotine.
Okay, interesting.
And some of these pouches, they're coming in at some seriously high nicotine levels.
Oh, really?
We're talking like 50 milligrams per gram or even higher.
50 milligrams. That's even more than that Siberia 80. Wow, that's That's intense.
pushing the boundaries.
So, which brands are kind of leading this whole like super strong nicotine pouch thing?
Well, the article, it mentions brands like Pablo 77 Ghost Edition, Dope, and R4F.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of those.
Yeah, they're really making waves in that super strong category.
Wow.
You can-
The whole world of snus and nicotine pouches is all about like pushing the limits
Right.
of how intense these products can be.
It's a trend, isn't it?
It makes you wonder like what's next?
Right. What's next? Flying to the moon with your nicotine pouch. Who knows?
Well, hey, I wouldn't rule it out at this point, but you know, on a more serious note, I think it's important to remember what you said earlier about, responsibility
Oh, absolutely.
when you're using these kinds of products.
It's crucial. Just because it's out there doesn't mean it's the right fit for everybody.
Right.
Especially if you're new to snus or nicotine pouches altogether, you don't want to start with the most intense stuff.
Yeah, for sure. It's like finding the right snus or pouch for you, it's kind of a journey.
It's a journey, not a race.
Exactly. It's not about like rushing to the most extreme thing.
Exactly. You want to pay attention to your body, see how you feel.
Right. Start slow.
Find what works for you.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of which, you mentioned earlier like white portions and original portions.
Yeah.
What's the difference there? I know moisture's part of it.
Moisture's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Original portions.
Okay.
They tend to be a lot moister.
Yeah.
Which, like we said,
Uh-huh.
means that nicotine is going to hit you faster and harder.
Okay.
And they usually have a much stronger tobacco flavor
Ah, okay.
because of that extra moisture.
So it's like you're getting more of that pure tobacco experience.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the difference between, I don't know,
Okay.
fresh squeezed orange juice versus concentrate.
Oh, okay. I like that.
You're getting the real deal.
Right.
With white portions, it's all about that drier, discreet experience. They're going to have a more subtle flavor.
Okay.
Nicotine release is going to be a bit slower and more controlled.
Right. It really just depends what we're going for, right? Like your own personal preference.
Exactly.
Some days you might be in the mood for something bolder,
Right.
and some days you might want something a little more mellow.
Absolutely.
Like with wine, right? Sometimes you want a bold red.
Exactly.
Sometimes you want a nice, crisp white.
Perfectly said. And within those categories, you've got a whole spectrum of strengths and flavors.
Right.
The possibilities are endless.
It's a whole world to explore.
It is.
Speaking of exploring, we actually got a listener question
Oh, nice.
that I think fits in perfectly here.
All right. Let's hear it.
This comes from Mark in Manchester.
Shout out to Mark.
And he says, and I quote, "I've heard about these super strong nicotine pouches that are out now. Are they really that much stronger than traditional snus? Or is it all just hype?"
That is a great question, Mark.
Right.
And it's something we definitely need to address. We talked about how super strong pouches, they really pack a punch when it comes to nicotine.
Yeah.
Often even stronger than the strongest snus you can find.
Okay.
But there's more to it than that.
Right. Because I remember you saying earlier, like, they use a different type of nicotine.
Exactly.
That's right. Traditional snus uses nicotine derived from tobacco, while many nicotine pouches use a synthetically produced nicotine.
Exactly. And, that difference in sourcing, it can actually lead to some pretty interesting variations in how that nicotine gets absorbed and how it feels.
Oh, really?
Yeah, some people say they get a faster, more intense hit from the synthetic stuff, while others find it smoother, less harsh. It really seems to depend on the person.
So it really is more than just, like, looking at the numbers on the label, huh?
Exactly. It's about the type of nicotine and how your own body reacts to it.
It's like a whole other layer of complexity to this whole thing.
It really is.
Yeah.
And you know what? There's still so much we don't know about these different forms of nicotine. Oh, yeah. Like how they affect us long-term, all that stuff. Still a lot of research to be done.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. It sounds like the world of snus and nicotine pouches, it's always changing.
Oh, absolutely. Constantly evolving.
With all these, like, new products and new technologies popping up all the time.
It's a really dynamic market,
Yeah.
driven by tradition, but also this desire for new experiences.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes it so exciting.
That makes sense. So I guess no matter where you are in your snus journey, there's always something new to try.
Exactly. But, as always,
Yeah.
knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to something like this.
That's right. That's right. So just to recap for our listeners, today we learned that snus strength, it's not just about how much nicotine is in there.
It's so much more than that.
It's this whole combination of things.
Like a recipe, remember?
Like a recipe, exactly.
Yeah.
So we talked about pH levels,
Right.
moisture, the flavor.
The format,
Yeah,
whether
that-
it's a pouch or loose or portioned.
It all makes a difference.
all of it contributes to how intense and enjoyable that experience is going to be. And ultimately, it's about finding what you like best.
Exactly, finding what works for you. And of course, we couldn't forget about those super strong nicotine pouches.
Oh, yeah. The new kids on the block.
Pushing the limits with that synthetic nicotine.
Definitely shaking things up. It's a really interesting time for snus and nicotine, that's for sure.
For sure. Well, folks, there you have it. That was your crash course in the world of strong snus and nicotine pouches.
There you go.
And remember, whether you're a seasoned pro
Right.
or just starting out, there's a whole world of flavor and sensation out there just waiting for you.
It really is. So get out there and explore.
Just be sure to do it responsibly.
Absolutely. Safety first, always.
All right. Well, that's it for this deep dive. Until next time.
Happy snussing.
See ya.